I felt I was really in on the very, very beginning of St. John Vianney because of this experience, because I was making phone calls to see if people were interested and available to join our new parish. Okay. Shortly after that, our founding pastor arrived on the scene, and Father Paul Schwab, who was a very dynamic, take-charge man. He knew from the onset what his job was, and it wasn't long before those of us who met him knew exactly where we fit in the big picture. The first thing we had to do was find someplace where we could have Sunday Masses. And through the kindness of the Millard School District and all of that, we were able to use the facilities at Sandoz School. It wasn't without a little bit of pain, though, in that each day that we gathered, each Sunday, everything, all the tables and chairs had to be hauled from the carriers, set up for service. And the other thing was this makeshift altar that we had, all hauled out, all put up, and then after the last Mass, all put away. But it was amazing, the spirit that was there in that, even though this was physical activity, men, women, and children did it willingly. We were becoming a family without even realizing it.
And I started back when we received the letter from Father Paul Schwab telling us that we were going to be in a new parish. It was June of 1974, and I was married a few years, and we had a 2-year-old daughter, and we went to Sandoz.
Sweet memory. When I first moved to Omaha in 1976, I decided to join St. John Vianney. At that time, Mass services were held at Sandoz Elementary School. I went to the Mass, which was presenting the children's Christmas program. The teachers knew that I was into music and asked if I would direct the children. I agreed to and led them that day. As we were getting ready and being on my knees, I looked up, and there were these long legs in front of me. Lo and behold, it was Father Paul Schwab. He looked down at me and asked, "Who the hell are you?" After telling him my name, we became the best of friends. I am thankful for my friendship with him and dearly miss him.
Father Paul the Builder. My first experience in 1974 when they were building the church, we had just gotten married and moved to the area, and I was working for the telephone company at the time, pulling wire into this very building. And a coworker of mine, who was also a charter parishioner, Ray Grinswick, I said, "Who is that guy standing there?" This is where the old altar was. And this tall, thin man in a black suit and a hard hat and a megaphone, he was standing on a stack of pylons. And he was barking directions to this group over here, move that over here, and you move that over here, and get that down. And I asked Ray, I said, "Who is that guy?" He goes, "Don't you recognize him? That's Father Paul." And Father Paul the Builder, he actually built this church, no doubt about it.
I've been involved with the Catholic Church, I think, going back to when I became an altar boy. My parents have always been very supportive, and I think that's, worked on me a little bit, knowing that they helped as much as they did and that I could probably do the same thing. The priests do a lot for us, and to give back to them what we can do to make their jobs a little bit easier. We thought it would be fun getting involved on the very beginning, which turned out to be quite rewarding. We had a great friendship with Father Paul, and it was just fun watching everything grow in the parish, from the time they spent over in the school next door, the Masses, and putting up the chairs and taking them down every Sunday was quite a task, but it turned out to be all right. And then when they finally opened this church, the church was built, it was quite a reward knowing that you were involved. You worked on the building fund and the committees to raise the funds and the money and everything, and that's kind of where we got started. The reason we did it is we just wanted to help get things established.
At this point, we had the rectory, we had the storage building, and they were beginning the work on the actual land preparation. And I can't remember exactly how long it took. It seemed like forever. But let me tell you, the first girder that went up was just so exciting, because here we were actually being able to see a visible building. It was beginning. Not only was the building beginning, we found that each time we were together, whether it was a worship situation, whether it was a business situation or whatever, with Father's guidance, we were developing family. As we went along, such a thing as simple as the usher group, that was a ministry that we had. Father felt it was important that we educate our children, and so our CCD classes began. And it was just one little, they just kind of evolved. I don't know, I'm sure there was a plan. Knowing Father, he didn't do anything without a plan. But it seemed it all kind of fell in place, and people stepped up and stood up and accepted their responsibilities, and we began to grow. And I do recall Father saying so many times that it's so important that we have more than bricks and mortar in this building. We're building a family. And I still think that's true today. All these 40 years since we're here, it's very, very evident in all of the exciting parish life that we have, the wonderful support we get from so many people who all you have to do is say, we need this, and 3 or 4 people are ready to do it. It's a beautiful parish spirit that we have here.
St. John Vianney is a very, very important part of our lives. People say that church is a building. It's not a building. It's a community. And I think what we take great joy is I come in here and I see these families year after year that I may not know their names, but I could pick them out, and I see their children when they're infants, and now they're growing and they have their own children there. Much as like when I did CCD for 10 years, you take satisfaction in somehow, maybe in some small way, you see some of these, your kids in class there, and there they are with their families. And that's such an important part in it, the gratification, and you are part of this church, this community, and that's what it is about, I think. So,
growing up in the church, it was always interesting to me the different sounds that I recall with the changing over the years. And in my letter, I talk about when we started at Sandoz, how after Mass everybody would have to move their chairs and fold them all up, and the clamoring of all of those chairs at the end of service. And to me, that was, I liked the commotion of it, and I guess that still holds true today.
There was no church here. We were still at Sandoz. A bunch of the ladies got together and decided we needed to meet as little groups, so we would meet as 8 or 10 in people's homes. The same home would be each month. And we discussed dinners and how the new church, the things we would need as for cooking dinners and making the kitchen in the new church. And we would just talk. It was a big friendship group, and so many that we have stayed friends with all over these years. Of course, we've lost a few of those that we miss dearly, but it was a great time to be together.
I'll never forget, we got a call on about the 22nd of December, speaking of those blue chairs. Someone called and said the chairs came in, and they had been supposed to come in like 2 weeks before. We need guys we need to set the church up for Christmas Mass. If we can get those chairs up, we can do Christmas in our new church. And, we just started calling people. That was before cell phones and everything. We just started calling people. And we must have had, I don't know, 30 or 40 people unboxing and putting those chairs, hooking them together and running string to try to get them in a straight line. And Father was running around yelling because one row was crooked. And but in one evening, we got this entire church set up. And the next day, the ladies came in and cleaned it, and we had Christmas Mass.
The very first Mass was in the church here for Christmas. After they built the church, it was December in 1976. And we had a youth choir. We had flute and clarinets, and it was really neat. And my son was 7 months old, and my daughter was 4 then. And so then, after a few more years of leading the singing, I ended up doing CCD. And it just seemed like I've been in different ministries of the church.
But through the years, we had also the commotion of, with the chair-style pews that we had when we first started here in the church. After we stand for service or whatever, and tossing the kneeler up, and you'd hear all of the kneelers making a racket, I guess, a couple of times, and I'd always wait until the roar of the kneelers was through, and then I would toss mine up just so I could stand out from the rest. I know that's hard for people to believe.
We have been parishioners at St. John Vianney for 35 years. Many of you who knew our founding pastor, Father Paul Schwab, will remember his dramatically presented homilies on Sundays. Our son, who was around 3 years old at the time, was playing down by the kneelers during one of those homilies. He was also apparently attuned to Father's homily because we could hear him quietly talking to himself and repeating the words he had heard Father say, "Damn, damn, hell, hell."
Okay, Father Paul Schwab was here when we first started. He actually baptized our son Brandon, and he just made a very good impression. We loved Father Paul Schwab, and then of course he got sick, and we were blessed to have Father Pat. And Father Pat is the person that I consider like a grandfather. My grandfather died, and just a loving man.
We got to St. John Vianney, and Father Paul was real big on, we have a good school system, and so we don't need a Catholic school, we'll teach them ourselves, and expected all the parents to get involved in teaching the faith. And I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to do this, I wasn't raised in the faith, I need some help. So I signed up for Father Paul's RCIA, and that was, he had this ability to really bring things down to an easy to understand level, and made me feel comfortable with the religion. And so I started teaching CCD, and it was a great experience for me because it kind of brought out, got me past my fears, I guess I'd say. And so spending time with the kids there, it wasn't long before I was getting involved in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, and ended up, working with youth all along. And I always say it as I was working with the youth, I quote Father Paul because I'd say, well, Father Paul said to me, or said to all of us so many times, the definition of love is the gift of yourself to others. And so I repeated that to kids all the time because they have a hard time understanding that word, which gets overused so much. And so when you bring it down and point it out that that's what love is, I think it means something to the kids because it did mean something to me.
Wow. We got involved with St. John Vianney when I had my first child because we had my daughter in 1982 and we had to find a parish, and we lived out in this area. So this was the one we joined. So at that point, we had her baptized. Father Paul baptized all my children. Some baptisms were longer than others. But when they were done, they were really baptized.
Cindy Jade, I baptize you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Oh boy. Oh yeah, I know. Oh boy, okay. Okay. You feel good? Now we're...
If you've never been to a Father Paul baptism, I should warn you that my son Bob is thoroughly baptized because his baptism took 2 hours. And it was after Mass, so Bob's really baptized. I don't think he knows that yet.
We used to have a lot of fun being a coordinator, though, because we always had a dinner every year. And so the first dinner I remember, though, Father Schwab and Father Mike Gruy were Karnak and Ed McMahon. And it was just hilarious. I couldn't believe as an adult, I had never seen 2 priests act up and have so much fun. But that was the beginning of that.
Well, we had a cry room that was behind the altar, and there were sliding glass doors back there. And you also could make quick flight to the parking lots if you sat back there. So it was always packed. I mean, with kids in every amount of disarray, and as well as adults that just wanted to flight. And so there were a lot of us who, I guess, really cared enough about Mass that we felt it important for our kids to learn Mass. So, and sometimes you just couldn't get in if you didn't get here early enough. But if one of those babies started crying and disturbing Father, really in any part of the Mass, especially consecration and the homily, you'd see a little bit of scouting around, and then all of a sudden he would just stop, and he would just look at you. And that was the evil eye.
When Father Tom Furlong come here, Father Paul was not one that liked much interruption in his Masses. In fact, it was known that he would stop Mass once or twice if a kid was crying until the parents took the kid out. When Father Tom come here, he said the doors the glass doors that used to be right here, were going to be opened, and there was a friendly discussion, yes, no, but so whenever Father Paul had Mass, the doors were closed, but when Father Tom had the doors were open, and eventually they stayed open. So, Father Paul didn't necessarily get his way all the time, but most of the time he did.
Father Pat was so welcoming of the children, and he once told a story in RCIA about how he was a priest at another church, and it was a very old congregation, old in terms of the age of its members, and all of a sudden somebody had their grandchild there one day, and in the back this baby started crying, and it was such a unique sound within that church. Everybody turned to see this infant cry, and I guess that's part of what set me down this path of the different sounds of the church. Is just that one memory that he had, and then he became so welcoming to the babies in the church, and with the new font and baptism, holding the children up as if they were Simba from The Lion King, and celebrating that, and applauding the children, and what have you. To me, it just kind of showed the evolution of not only St. John Vianney, but the church as a whole, in that, at some point or another, we realized that we needed to become more welcoming to our parishioners. And I think even today that holds true. I often get scolded from my wife and even some parents of other children, because oftentimes I'm an instigator of children laughing in the pews or giggling or what have you. And to me, that is all part of what this is about.
It's kind of amazing when you look back and back to 1995 when we first encountered Father Tom Ward, and then we encountered Father Pat, and then we came here, and our parish was really blessed to have both of those priests here, and obviously have touched our lives in many ways. And now that Father Tom is no longer with us and Father Pat is in retirement, they've created a lot of good memories, I think, for not only our family but for this church, and kind of left a legacy that will be able, hopefully, to continue. The fruits of their hard labor will continue to provide a lot of good things for years to come.
Bob and I are original members of St. John Vianney. Father Paul was a part of many of our family's special occasions. Our daughter Leslie was baptized at the V Street Rectory in 1974, and was confirmed here. Father Paul accompanied us on the drive to Kalamazoo, Michigan, to perform the marriage ceremony for our son, Paul, and his wife, Erin, at St. Joseph's Church in 1995. Their first child was baptized at St. John Vianney in 1999. Father Pat directed the remodeling of our beautiful church and a new gathering space. He taught us the value of community and how to have a good party while honoring our Lord. He initiated the Sunday during Mass baptisms, and we always loved it when he hoisted the baby aloft and presented the newest member of the parish family by name. He baptized our first grandson in 2001. I think the most valuable thing I learned from him was that we are never in charge and to just trust in our God. Father Richard was a gift to the parish in 2013. He has quickly become our advocate, always looking out for our best interest. We are gradually finding out more about him, as in his love of plants and his great talent as an artist. We look forward to many years of his leadership. We have been blessed with 3 wonderful priests in our 40 years as a parish.
Well, you know, when I was leaving St. Leo's after 13 years there, and Father Schwab was sick and ultimately died in September after I came. And so the Archbishop asked me if I would like to come here. And I said, well, sure. I think anybody who is succeeding Father Paul Schwab had a good setting to work into. And so I came. Now, at the same time, I'd have to say that I realized that Father Schwab had been here 25 years. And he had very big shoes, not just because he was tall either. And so I guess I've always kind of felt like I never had to fill anybody else's shoes, that I had my own and that I could walk in them. But I also knew that breaking into a parish that has had one pastor for 25 years can have its own complexities. So I kind of jokingly say that for the first 5 years here, I felt like I was the new priest around here, you know. And yeah, eventually, I mean, I think that was more my problem than anybody else's, but eventually that went away.
Well, I guess Father Paul Schwab he kind of helped us through some tough times when we have 5 children, and so kind of helped through some tough times that we had with unemployment and several things. When the church was redone, I was concerned that part of the old church wasn't going to be here, but the baptism fount is where 3 of our kids were baptized, with the original one is actually in the building. So that's kind of nice to know, those kind of memories.
Father Pat came 14 years ago, and well, now it's been 15 years. But I was excited to meet him. I knew the McCaslin name, but never knew Father Pat personally. And first time we met, we talked a while about Holy Angels. And I was actually in the last 8th grade graduating class from Holy Angels grade school. And my mother, who is still alive, remembers his family. And she said she remembers his mom and dad coming to church every Sunday, and all the kids in a row, all the way down to Father Pat, who was the youngest, and he was always the last little one at the tail end of the McCaslins, and they'd come in and sit and go to church. And she said they were quite a nice family, big family. And so several times over the years when we've had fish fries, I brought my mom out here, and she's gotten to talk to Father Pat about things going on that happened at Holy Angels. And so we had that connection. It was always nice to hear him speak about Holy Angels in his homilies on Sunday. And so, that was always nice to see and nice to hear. But I do miss that sometimes, but I also welcome Father Richard. I think he's a wonderful priest, and I'm happy to still belong to St. John Vianney.
Since we were living overseas, I guess one of the memorable experiences for me was we were living in a community where there was no religious education that was provided for the children, and our children were grade school aged, and we knew that it was an important thing for us to be able to provide religious education for our family, or for our 2 daughters. So I approached the religious education staff here about what could be useful things for us to be teaching to our children. And they gave us some pointers and perhaps some materials, and we were able to take them back. And that provided a good foundation for us to carry on our faith in an area that really didn't provide it or promote it. And I found that the staff was just so very helpful and so very loving to go out of their way to help and support it. Well, we moved back to the United States about 10 years ago, and at that point, we then became members of St. John Vianney. Our 2 daughters were high school aged at that time, and my husband, and we all became members of St. John Vianney. We participated in the religious education activities. My husband and I are Eucharistic ministers here, and we like to do some baking or preparation of salads and nice tasty goods for the funerals or for any social events that they may have. And we've always found St. John Vianney Parish parishioners to be warm, cordial, and always very inviting. And it's been a good growth for us, both spiritually and socially.
Then in 1999, Father Pat came, and in 2000, my husband died and suddenly, and Father Pat was just wonderful, and we had Father Paul Albernicius was the assistant at the time, and they were very caring, and they helped me get through it. And it just seems like there's been so many wonderful people that have touched me through the 40 years I've been here. And it's just, I love the fellowship. Father Pat brought that wonderful fellowship to our church, and the narthex and the parish center has been, I think, a very positive thing in our parish.
We started here in 1986. I really wasn't a participator of Mass. I'm not proud to say it, but I wasn't. And my participation started really was when my son, Christopher, he was 6 years old and says, I want to go to Sunday school. And so we said, okay. I would bring him, and I would sit outside when Mass was going on and read my paper and smoke my cigarette and drink my coffee. And needless to say, I would get some looks from people when I was out there. I think after a while there, I said, well, this is kind of silly. Maybe I should go in there. And I started coming into church and going to Mass. And then it got to be a little catching there. And so I would come every Sunday and go to Mass. But then my wife, we had this other one. He was a little bit more rambunctious than Christopher. And we would bring him, and then slowly it was, we couldn't miss Mass, and the boys, and Christopher, as he moved on, he wanted to be an altar server, and I slowly became more involved. I was in adoration, and we were greeters, and then lo and behold, Chris goes, he wants to be an EME, and he becomes an EME, and then he says, Mom and Dad, I want you to be an EME, and so we did that, and then our youngest one, he was an altar server and then an EME also.
I came here with my wife in 1993. I was baptized with my daughter on the same day and brought into the faith. Father Tom Furlong had given me my instructions and really led me to the Catholic faith along with my wife. Father Pat was also very instrumental in taking care of our family when my brother passed away suddenly. We looked for a place where we could have a ceremony for him. And Father Pat and the office staff really put together a nice memorial for my brother. Even though he wasn't Catholic, they took care of us. It's been really nice to enjoy this family, like my wife said, that we have with the parish. All the activities we get involved with, the friends we've made through the Knights of Columbus and other organizations we're involved with, like the choir. It's just been a really rich experience.
The beautiful and unique part of our sanctuary is the olive wood crucifix. that all kind of happened by an act of God, I think, that we had this done by the Palestinian people from the Holy Land who were here selling their wares about the same time that a little group of us who were the decoration committee of the church when we were still in building process. Somebody said, wouldn't it be nice if we could have a cross for our church made out of that stuff? And so I asked the Palestinian fellow who was the salesman here, and his father is the one who owns the company over in Jerusalem. And so he said, well, I'll call him, and he called, and the next day he called me, and he said I talked to my father, and he would be really happy to do that. And so we have created a one and only crucifix like we have here. And it's great if you get into the up close and to look and you see how they had to repair the wood, because the wood is very old. I have a certificate, real or imagined, I don't know, but it says that this olive tree would have been at least 2,000 years old, that the torso was made out of. And so, that's all kind of part of the uniqueness for me of appreciation of the beauty of our church, and even the wall that is the backdrop for the crucifix, for me is a very special, it's a very special wall upon which hangs this absolutely unique crucifix that we've got. So I'm very proud of our crucifix, and proud of the committee that made the suggestion that we go this direction, because it has really worked for us.
One year, Kathy Lovelace and Rick Darrell rewrote a Garth Brooks song, and we sang it for Father Jim Sullivan. He was from Montana, and it was just perfect to sing, to be high. Instead of in low places, we were in high places. And we just had the best time. I really loved Father Jim Sullivan. He was so meek and so appreciative. And at first when he came, he said thank you all the time. And everybody couldn't believe that that was really him, but it was. He just always thanked everybody for everything they ever did. Really, really miss him.
Father Jim Sullivan was such a kind man. I remember him making my mother-in-law cry at a confession, which sounds really bad, but it was really good. It was something she needed, because he told her what a wonderful woman she was. And he told that to everybody he met. Everybody, the children, everybody, and he was such a kind man.
My wife and I joined the parish. It was funny, we've never been in the parish boundary of this church, and we found it when we were in our first home, and we really enjoyed the parish. And then we moved further west, and we looked at the parish that was in our boundaries, and we decided that we really liked St. John Vianney. So we've been coming here. It's a smaller parish, and it's more of a family.
My husband and I moved to Millard. We had been parishioners in Bellevue, and we found this church. My brother had been a member of this church, and so had a little bit of family here already. And the church has been a family to us over the years. We've been active members of the church, participating in the choir. I do parish nursing, and I'm a communion minister here.
When a parish is looking at its kind of the physical setting, it today for sure, it demands more than just a sanctuary. Certainly that's the focus of our worship, and it's the focus of the community in its best sense of the term. But there are other parts too, and it's the other parts that we created here in the building that also stand out as part of a legacy. And not the least important is the area we're in right here, this narthex, we call it. Because we have here kind of that immediate gathering space, both before and after liturgy. And it has proven to be that, people come early and they stay late and they kind of hang around in here. And in some ways, the creation of a community that becomes church, it is because people kind of waste time together. That's a good expression, you know, that we spend time together just kind of being able to be ourselves and to be kind to one another and sensitive to one another and all of that. And the Narthex is a beautiful area anyhow. But also then the other side, the social hall, which is also a very big part of what parish community life involves. And the sheer beauty of the place is one thing, but the opportunities that it has provided over these years have been just magnificent. And so many good things have gone on in there. Simple things, simple gatherings. We also did, in my time, we did most of our RCIA classes in there. And we did a lot of just good, simple social things. And you add all of our Lenten fish fries, too, to that. And you have a lot of good things have gone on in there. So
we remember when the fish fry started here, which was under Father Pat. And he was so different from Father Paul as far as wanting to have parties and involve everybody. And that's the kind of parish I grew up in as a kid. I wasn't from the Omaha area, but it's what I remember as a kid, having a lot of parties, a lot of bingo parties, a lot of things like that. So I was very enthused when that happened. And we came to the first fish fry, and there probably were only maybe 10 tables. I don't think even that. They didn't extend the tables onto the floor of the new gym. That's how few people were there. It's a very quiet evening, but it was a lot of fun. Meat raffle was awesome. I was, hey, anytime I can gamble and spend money and, do things for good, it was a good thing. Within the few years, we watched it grow to the point where you can barely get in the door now, but we still look forward to those every year because we see people we haven't seen forever. We see old friends, we make new friends. My grandchildren are into it now. So it's a feeling of community that makes you come to Mass and you see people you see, and it just brings us all together. It's a wonderful feeling to have, and it makes it feel so much more inclusive, and we've always really enjoyed that. So yeah, we've been involved in a lot of different things over the years, all of them, lots of fun memories.
Certainly the building has been so significant for so many different ways, When I reflect on my life as a priest here, I think about baptisms and weddings and funerals, as well as liturgy, Sunday liturgy, daily liturgy. I don't know how many weddings I had here, but a lot, And some priests don't like a lot of weddings, but I really enjoyed every wedding I think I ever did. There's something about the setting that is a perfect setting for evangelization of everyone, including the bride and groom. But it's also a great thrill for me to be participant in what is the most important thing these kids will do ever in their life. Getting married is about as significant an act as human beings do. And so that has been great. And of course, I buried an awful lot of my friends. In funerals here. And that has created just all kinds of good memories for me that are worth everything. It's a very those are good memories. But of course, some of my favorite times were in my baptism masses, and I think people always knew I was having a good time when I would be raising these babies up. But that's a great thrill too, to be part of family. Major family events like baptisms and weddings and funerals and first communions and all of that, getting to do that here in this community for 14 years is all just great in my memory bank,
And I do remember serving with Father Pat when I was an associate at St. Leo's. It was a great experience for me to work with him and, of course, to see his value for building community, which is probably a great trait that he has passed on to me as pastor now to help build and continue to build the community here at St. John Vianney.
we were supposed to talk about, what St. John Vianney meant to us. And, it's kind of like my real family. Very comfortable here with the people. They're real comfortable with me, I hope. I don't try to be too serious. I think you got to have a sense of humor. And if you don't, well, then you got some problems with me. Maybe I talk too much. I don't know, asked a lot of questions. But this is the place where I come to get God, of course. But it's more than that. It's just the whole community, the people I know here over the years. Kind of reflected on old people I knew way back when I first came here, and then throughout my time here. And I've been here like about 2 years shy of what the anniversary date is, I think. It's been about 38 years.
I run into people today and they'll say, "Do you miss St. John Vianney?" And my response is two or threefold, First one is, I miss this space. The space is very sacred, very memorable, and very beautiful. I miss the people who fill that space even more than the space, I mean, I have a lot of really good old buddies here, the elderly and the kids and the staff people that I've had throughout the years. They've all been really important to me. The other thing is that I say, do I miss it? Well, I'm happy to be retired. I worked 7 years after I could have retired, so half of my time here. I could have been retired, but I never really feel bad about the fact I didn't retire at 70 rather than at 77, because these 7 years were just absolutely wonderful years. But retirement's even better. But it's better because I have so many good feelings about my life as a priest and just myself and all the wonderful people who have contributed to who I am and all of that. So
we really hold St. John Vianney near and dear to our hearts, and it's a parishioners' church, as I like to call it, where you come here and you are a valued parishioner, and everybody is engaged and involved to help in the mission that Christ has for his church here on earth. So St. John Vianney continues to bless us, and we continue to meet and be surrounded by wonderful people that work here, from the office staff to all the priests that we've met and have been fortunate to have masses led by through the years, and I still am very blessed to be able to continue to lecture and do my small part, and to do our family's small part in carrying on the mission of Christ in the Catholic Church.
I'm just happy to be a parishioner with my family, and it's nice to have our kids kind of carry on the traditions that we started too. They're becoming religious ed teachers as well themselves as adults, and I just want to wish St. John Vianney a happy 40th and many more years of wonderful, a parish life here with all of our family and everyone that we have here. It is truly a family here at St. John Vianney. We're so proud to be part of it.
It's about everybody being allowed to worship and to be a part as they want, and not having huge expectations put on anybody. And I think that's what I really value is that sense of family and that sense of God's graces being here, whether it's in this building, as beautiful as, but it was just as strong in the old flat top blue building. It was just as strong. And so I think we are really blessed, and we need to remember that this was just the first 40.
When I first wrote tried writing down these thoughts, in closing, I thought about this old commercial that used to be on TV years ago. It was a cigarette commercial, and it said, "You've come a long way, baby." Well, I've kind of adopted that as ours to describe what's going on here. We too have come a long way, baby, but we're not done yet. Just watch us grow.